English translation. 17th contact, Friday, 9th May, 1975, 2:48, airs.
You have been waiting a long time for this contact.
It has come about because our carelessness in your film and photo work has caused various difficulties. These first had to be regulated and neutralized. In order to prevent further such occurrences, we have issued a provision that you shall not take any more photos or films for the time being. On the other hand, the material available to you should be sufficient for the time being.
Too bad, but it seems to me that you dramatize the matter a little bit, which is completely strange to me about you.
The whole thing was a lot more serious than you seem to think. Not for nothing did I direct the steps towards eliminating plant life forms. Such things are subject to certain laws of our race that allow such eliminations only in emergencies. And in this case, there was such an emergency, even if it may not seem so to you. But you will understand this when you know that the military you observed was actually in action on the 21st of April because of my beamship. In the meantime, we have established this with certainty, among many other things. So your fears and assumptions were right about that. Many other things have happened in these contexts, so we have had to spend all the time of the last few days trying to resolve these difficulties. The plight required that all those people who had gained dangerous knowledge of our cause be analyzed out of the masses. With all of them, we were forced to eliminate their memories in this respect in order to avoid damage of any kind. No, all the confusion and difficulties were very serious, and I do not dramatize them in any wise. I therefore understand that I cannot allow any further photos or films, etc. for the time being, in the longer term. But I will give you the opportunity to put other things on your films. But there is still time, and you have to be patient.
It is a pity, Sim Yase, but I understand your point of view because your speech makes sense to me. If you allow me, I would like to ask you another well-known question right at the beginning. A few days ago, I met a young man who has certain consciousness-based abilities. His question is the same as all the questions of the others before, namely, whether...
I have already made myself clear and...
Of course, I know that. It was just a question.
Why do you ask? That is illogical and does not correspond to your thinking. It seems to me that this question is not yours.
You are right about that, because I was forced to ask the question, so to speak. Because I promised to, although I knew your answer before.
This illogicality would also have been incomprehensible to me about you, because it does not correspond to the state of your development of consciousness.
You are throwing flower gardens around freely again today.
I am just stating facts. But now hear what I have to say. It is now really time to spread the knowledge quantum you have accumulated in your reports. Clarify things at the next opportunity and make progress. Do not think that time is not in a hurry, because in the last few weeks things have happened that require a drive forward. But I do not want to talk about these things yet, because the time is not ripe yet.
On Saturday we have our next meeting. As you know, there I will discuss these things. But if you now allow me, I would have one or two very personal questions for you.
Certainly.
For many years, I have been observing a phenomenon in myself that I cannot clarify with any means. For a very long time, I have been trying to find out about my past of former lives, or at least to find out about it in part. I have tried this in many forms, but never really succeeded. In a completely normal state, I came across things that gave me memories of earlier lives. But that was all, because I never found certain details. Therefore, I tried on several occasions to attract extraordinarily good hypnotists for this purpose, who would put me back by hypnosis. But even the best of them failed and did not put me under hypnosis, quite the contrary. My senses became clearer and sharper in just a few fractions of a second. I always felt immediately when they tried to penetrate me, and in a flash something completely inexplicable to me formed in me, With rapid speed, which actually did not need any more time, a defense block was automatically created, which the hypnotists were unable to break through. As a second factor, a counterattack block formed with the same rapid speed, which attacked the hypnotists without me consciously wanting such a thing. If the hypnotists did not immediately let go of me, then they were played along badly. Screaming in pain, they held their heads, waved and curved until they lay on the ground foaming out of their mouths and finally fell into deepest unconsciousness. Some of them even came close to death in this manner, and owed their survival only to the fact that I tried to live their lives with all the strength of my mind and consciousness. In the same wise, all attempts to penetrate me secretly failed. Also in other experiments without hypnosis, the same phenomena came to light. But how and why these defense and attack blocks are automatically and rapidly built up in me is a mystery to me. So I want to ask you how and why this is, and whether there is a possibility to use hypnosis with me.
I have feared these questions for a long time because I have known them in you for years. I was afraid of them because they were connected with things that I was not allowed to name, because they lead into too deep spiritual and consciousness-based insights, which I suppose you will only find in much later years through your natural development. And it is precisely this development that I must not anticipate, if I am not mistaken. On the other hand, there are things that I can explain to you, but which must remain your secret, because only you can understand them. If certain things were mentioned to others, a catastrophe could result for many people because this knowledge contains too many great dangers, and for its understanding requires a consciousness-based and spiritual wisdom that corresponds to yours. People with little wisdom or without such wisdom would exploit this knowledge negatively with absolute certainty, partly for egoistic and autocratic reasons, and partly for complete ignorance. So if you want me to answer parts of your questions, what I can explain for everyone, though, is this. Your defensive and offensive block against hypnotic forces attempting to penetrate you is created by the wisdom of your consciousness and mind as protection that certain secrets slumbering in you are not recognized and not evaluated, because the knowledge and power of these secrets would be too great and powerful for other people to recognize and evaluate them in a sensible and rational manner. As for the possibility that you could be hypnotized, it does exist. But this possibility is only up to you. On the other hand, it is also the case that your defensive and offensive block can be broken or destroyed with sufficient forces, which, however, must be very large and can practically only be produced by several hypnotists in one combined force. But this possibility is very small because your blocks have a tremendous and mysterious energy. However, if the blocks can be broken, which is very doubtful, then this can only be done with evil and unreasonable violence, which would violently confuse your consciousness and would not benefit the users of violence. Remember, therefore, that for your own benefit and for the protection of your fellow human beings, you should not allow yourself to be subjected to hypnotic attempts. In and of itself, it would be completely harmless to yourself, but it could bring a confused consciousness or even death to those persons themselves who would make such attempts on you. Your defensive blocks are so stable and strong that everything has to fail. This is also one of the reasons why the best expert of any responsible science will never be able to analyze you and will judge you fundamentally wrong. The only thing that is largely ascertainable about you is the character traits of astrological destiny in a general sense, as they are largely applicable to all those in general who belong to a certain sign of the zodiac.
These are things I have long suspected and which have become a certainty to me. But I would still like to receive those explanations from you which you may entrust to me. Of course, I will keep quiet about that and keep it all to myself.
So let me explain this knowledge base to you.
Your explanations make many things clear to me what I have been puzzling about for years, but there is still much to be said. I guess I can sort things out over time, just like you said.
Sure, but now to other things that are very important. At the beginning of our contacts, I talked in detail about various fraudsters in beam ships. I spoke by name of George Adamski and his closest friends. In this regard, I have noticed some things in the last weeks that are very unpleasant. I know that at the beginning of our contacts, you sent some material of photos and reports to certain addresses. Since Adamski is exposed in those reports as the biggest cheater, some unpleasant things have resulted. In the last few weeks, various things have been done by various well-known parties to bring this cheater Adamski even more into the public eye as a hero and to present him as the actual father of the UFO contacts. Basically, his closest friends, etc., are cited as witnesses who swore that they had seen and experienced various things with Adamski. But these witnesses have unconsciously fallen into lying and claim things that do not correspond to the truth. George Adamski influenced his friends and acquaintances so suggestively that they saw and experienced things that did not exist. Only very, very few people knew that Adamski had good suggestive powers, which is why they feared him and kept it quiet. But that he was a phenomenal suggester was completely unknown, and of course he himself kept this secret in his favor. By this extraordinarily high suggestive power, he influenced his friends and acquaintances and led them to believe in the most fantastic things, which they then testified in lieu of an oath as truth. You should spread this fact through your group because it is important. And because this matter is so important, I came back to this particular case. Your Earth is approaching the end of an era of development, and a new one is coming, which I have already talked about before. Your present earthly race is a witness of this upheaval, and many people try to exploit it religiously and materially. Beware of cheaters and charlatans like Adamski was. There are many like him who are already working, and there will be many like him, and all of them will spare no means to make a profit. They lift us up lyingly to perfection beings, which we really are, but not because we are human beings like you, and we are as fallible as you human beings on Earth. You should always be aware of that. I explain this because now I want to say some things that you have asked me to say before. You asked me about the future I was supposed to predict. I did not do this because I wanted to discuss this point with the others first, because such future-oriented statements often contain dangers, because people are not able to cope with them. But now we came to the conclusion that I should name general things that relate to your home country. Since you have asked expressly for future predictions, I would like to make the following explanation so that no misunderstandings arise. We know two possibilities in order to see the future. One possibility is that we travel into the future in a material conscious-based manner and observe and register the events of the time in question on the spot, as I did with Mr. Jacob, for example. This is what we call the direct vision of the future. The second possibility is that of calculating combinatorial seeing, as it is also done in part by you and is known under the wrong name or the wrong designation, clairvoyance. This kind of future view is also doubtful and erroneous with us and does not exclude false observations and false descriptions. So when I make a prediction for your homeland, this factor must not go unnoticed. 1. This year, 1975, wild water and snow masses will cause many deaths in Switzerland and millions of damages with devastating devastations. It will be a very eventful year in this respect alone. 2. Increasing road traffic will cause so many deaths in the coming years, mainly in cities, that larger towns and cities will impose harsh bans, speed limits, and penalties on internal traffic. In some cases, traffic will be completely cut off in larger town and city centers. Only public transport companies will still have the right to drive in these centers. 3. The non-megalomaniacal and non-autocratic defensive behavior of the citizens of Switzerland, as it will be claimed, will put Switzerland in severe isolation as a result of its non-accession to a European alliance that will come around the turn of the millennium, which will lead to various crises. The reputation of the country is severely damaged, and the citizens of the country are proscribed to at least for a certain time, until the country and its population-damaging state governments will make approvals to the European alliance. 4. Very troubled times roll through the country and create great confusion. In particular, crime is taking over and taking its toll. Calls for the reintroduction of the death penalty are being heard, and various criminal laws are being forced to become harsher, even though they are often illogical and primitive in and of themselves. Robbery, murder, manslaughter, and white-collar crime will play decisive roles. 5. Switzerland's economic situation will continue to deteriorate and culminate in an evil climax with high unemployment, whereby honorable citizens commit confused acts and breaches of the law. Suicides out of this situation will not be uncommon, and the whole thing will carry itself into the third millennium. 6. Very rapidly from this year on, many people will be exposed to psychological stress which they are not able to cope with. Many such people will seek suicide through this, and the number of them will constantly increase by leaps and bounds. 7. The political situation will also create serious internal and external problems and confusion. The present government will remain in office, but it will begin to ferment unpleasantly. 8. In the near future, the Swiss currency will be forced to fall by significant foreign influences, which will not be remedied until 1976, when a new government will remedy the situation. 9. Switzerland will go down in history as a drug trafficking center for Europe, and despite tougher laws, they will be far too illogical and incomplete to put a stop to drug crime and drug abuse. 10. Over time, Switzerland loses its reputation as a golden country and a paradise for tourism. Especially the constant inflation will bear a considerable blame for this, in addition to the snobbish and unreasonable behavior of the citizens towards the foreigners. 11. Religious madness of all kinds will produce an abundant and often deadly harvest for countless Swiss citizens. The delusion is not only preceded by the sects and religions, but also by the authorities because they fear that the masses will become apostate and uncontrollable, that they will start to think and that they could rise up against enslavement. These are my predictions for your homeland and for the next 30 years. Are you satisfied with that?
But of course, Simya say it is even more than I expected.
But be aware that these kinds of predictions may be subject to certain changes or that they may contain errors. They are not the result of a direct material vision of the future, but only the product of calculating combinatorial seeing, as your clairvoyants do. For a direct material view of the future, however, the great mass of your humanity is not capable of experiencing and coping with it, which is why I am not allowed to give it.
I fully understand, and I am also satisfied with this kind that you have given. But for today it should be enough, because I must go home to bed again.
I am sorry I ripped you out of your sleep, and I am sure that is why you are still tired.
Of course I am, and I am freezing, because despite the warmth of the day, the nights are still cold. But the real reason is my wife, because I am chirped off without waking her up and informing her. When she suddenly wakes up and I am not there, she gets scared. So I have to go home and go to bed like nothing happened.
Sure, I understand that, so I do not want to hold you back any longer. Only briefly, I would like to explain to you that in a few weeks I will have to leave for a longer period of time, and that we will then only maintain mental contact.
Oh, so you got a fish, huh?
That seems to be your modern language again?
Right? And it means you laughed at a man and wants to get married?
Laughing out loud, no, I feel much better without a man, at least now. I may have something planned for later, but now go, for you have said.
Spoil sport.
We can talk about these things some other time if you care so much.
I would love to, because I have a few questions for once. But what about it? Do you already have something suitable on your fishing rod with which you are flirting? Maybe such a scaly thing with a built-in antenna on the skull?
What makes you think that?
Do you not know this nonsense?
I really do not know what you mean by that.
The dear Earthlings make their stupid jokes about Moon and Mars and other space people. They draw them as scale-reinforced monsters with fixed skull antennas, feelers, 5 breasts, and many other idiocies. They call these things humor.
That is unknown to me, but I find it quite primitive.
That is probably the right name and probably also clarifies the mind of the humorist concerned. But it is incomprehensible to me that you do not know that about these things. Do not you read newspapers and magazines, etc.?
Sure, because I move here and there among the terrestrial human beings, shielded from the earthly human vibrations, and get hold of something readable from time to time, but I have never found such things in it.
If, of course, you only read Mickey Mouse, Fix and Foxy and Superman booklets, then you might not be in the right place.
Laughing, I actually know them and I think they are funny. However, other readables are mostly only newspapers, etc.
It is all right, Simyase. I was just kidding.
That is how I felt about your words. Yes, now it is really time.